Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about the other side of my car passion. I'm a massive car nerd, and it doesn't just extend to full-size cars, it very much goes into model cars as well. Now, I have done a video of my model car collection on the proper DriveTribe channel before, and that went down really well, and it seems like there's a lot of people that are also really into their model cars. So I thought I'd show you the cars that didn't make it into that video. So those were my really special high-end cars, and these are more, I wouldn't say they're more mundane. They are very cool, but they're maybe just not quite on the same level as the silk cut Jags and everything that was in that video. So, unsurprisingly, I'm gonna start off with a Jag. This guy here is the Jaguar R1. Now, I grew up during the V10 F1 era, and this car was by far my favourite. I would still say to this day, there has not been a nicer looking F1 livery than this. The HSBC Lear Jag, absolutely fantastic. This is Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar R1. So this was the first car that Jaguar made. Having bought the Stewart Grand Prix team, I have got a Stewart Grand Prix back in London that's got Barrichello in the car. But this is Eddie Irvine, and it is one of my prized models that sits on my shelf and I can look at it every single morning. I absolutely love it. That green is just, it brings me back to when I was a boy. What's really cool about this model is it's made by Hot Wheels, which means it's actually really good value, but the cars, the 1 to 18 cars that Hot Wheels were making back then were really good quality. I mean, there's not the best detail. I mean, the exhaust bits here are quite simplistic, and the suspension and stuff isn't as technical as some more expensive models. But for what you get, and I think this cost maybe 25, 30 pounds when it was new, it is fantastic value. And I've been looking for other cars from this run of models ever since buying this one. So as I say, I've bought the Barrichello Stewart Grand Prix down in London, and I'm really after, I'd like an Arrows, a Jordan, and maybe a McLaren, but I do need to research what cars they made. I don't think they made the entire F1 field, but this is one of my favourite models, and it may be a wee bit dusty from sitting on my bookshelf, but I absolutely love it. Stay tuned for what could be coming to the DriveTribe channel very soon, featuring a much bigger version of this car. More on that later. I definitely went through a Lancia phase at some point during my teenage years, and this was the result of that. This is a Lancia Stradale, and it is probably still one of the prettiest cars ever made. That Ferrari V6 in the back. This is the Stradale, so street version, so not the full rally liveried up car, and I think it actually looks better for it. In this yellow, it is absolutely stunning. I would love to drive one of these one day, even if it's one of those replicas with the Alpha V6 in the back. It is such a cool car. It was a Gandini design when he was at Bertone, although I would really like to add another car based on this on my collection. The Group 5 version of this car, basically the track version. There was the famous rally car, but wait till you see how pretty the track car is. Now this one isn't quite as special, but it still means quite a lot to me. Now I keep the frame on this one because I actually perched the Jag F1 car on top of it on my shelf. But this is an Audi R8 GT. So this was the special edition version of the V10 Audi R8, the Gen 1 car. And the main way that you can see that it's immediately a GT is the aero on the back, the rear wing. So slightly more power, slightly less weight, and then a bit of aero. It's such a cool car. I had my first supercar experience when I was about 13 years old in a V8 R8, and since then this Gen 1 shape has just always appealed to me, and when I get a bit of dosh in the bank, a Gen 1 Audi R8 is pretty much on the top of my shopping list. So I keep this on my bookshelf. I think I received this as a Christmas present from my parents way back then. And it's sort of inspiration for me, because I really think and really hope that one day I will have a car that looks very similar to this, and I would have this spec, the silver and black. I really hope to have one of these, not specifically the GT, just the V8 manual on my driveway one day. Now the next car isn't too special really when you think about it. It's a Bentley Continental GT Supersport convertible, and it's not the usual model that I would go and buy, and in actual fact it was gifted to me, but the story behind it actually means a lot to me. When I first started out wanting to be a car writer, a journalist, I started up my blog. It's called gasketcase.com. It's on WordPress. I'm sure if you Google gasket case Mike Fernie, you'll see the first things I ever wrote about cars on the internet. And the way I went about that was I used connections from school, parents of friends, and also some of my dad's either friends or business partners. I knew some of them had really nice cars, so I thought I'll hit them up and they can give me a shot in their car and I'll write a review about it. Now, one of Dad's business partners had this exact car and he'd recently bought it, and he allowed me at 21 years old to go and review it. So it was all set up. The last thing he had to do was phone the insurers, and sadly the insurer said absolutely no chance, he needs to be at least 30 to have a go in it. So I still would not be able to have a go in that guy's Bentley Continental. Now obviously Dad's business partner was so keen to let me have a shot in it because he knew how much it would mean to me. So to kind of, I guess, get rid of some of the disappointment, one day the bell rang and this model was delivered. So he thought, I can't give him a drive in my car for half an hour, but I can give him something. So he bought me this. So I see this as a real indication of where I've come from, scrapping for a little blog post, to now be in charge of one of the biggest automotive YouTube channels in the world. So I see this on my shelf and I think, yeah, you've done all right. Next up is a car I've been sent by the lovely people at Agora Models. This is a stunning Shelby Mustang GT 500, 1:18 scale, and the detail is so nice. The finish, the racing stripes down the middle, everything opens up so you can check out the interior. In there you've got proper moving steering wheel, you've got pedals, you've got a fire extinguisher. It is such a nice model. And Agora actually go much bigger than this. Their main feature car these days is a 1:8 Shelby Mustang Super Snake. So that was the car that basically had a GT40 engine in it and was just one of the most extreme prototypes ever made. There was only one ever made, and it was used to trial some new Goodyear tyres. The GT500 normally just didn't have the power to really test the tyres, so they put in basically a Le Mans V8. I think that car is the most expensive Mustang ever sold at auction, $2.2 million. So this isn't quite as intense as that, but it is a lovely model, and weirdly, I have this normally in my flat in London, and it perfectly suits the paint scheme of our living room. So normally my girlfriend isn't too keen to have cars littering the living room on shelves and all that kind of thing, but this one is allowed to be there because it fits in. So nice one, Agora, and the details are lovely. I must admit I'm not a Mustang guy, but this thing fits into my collection very nicely. Speaking of Le Mans, the Bentley Speed 8. Possibly, it's definitely in my top 3 racing cars of all time, and that's saying a lot considering how much I'm into Le Mans these days. This is the Le Mans winner from 2003, and yeah, I bought it while I was in London and it's stayed with me ever since. It's travelled around my London flat. It's actually featured in a DriveTribe video way back, probably 2 years ago. I did a video on why racing cars are actually much smaller than you think, and this was used basically to set the scale for a racing prototype and compare it to GT cars. The main thing was that the windscreens are much smaller than you think. It's almost like an optical illusion. Your eyes see the windscreen of a racing prototype and think it's the same as a normal car windscreen, but actually, I don't know how well you can see that, the windscreens on these prototypes are tiny, which means the whole car is scaled down. It is one of the prettiest prototypes ever made, possibly the prettiest prototype ever made, and that, I don't know what you call it, is a Bentley Racing Green. Very simplistic livery, just with Bentley, some Breitling sponsorship. Yeah, what a car. And I've been lucky enough to see 2 of these in the paddock at Silverstone, and I wouldn't quite say shared a track. It was the day I drove the Ginetta G55 around Silverstone. It was in the session after me. But for me to have a day driving around Silverstone and then for me to nip into the pits and have a Bentley Speed 8 take my place, phenomenal. Annoyingly, recently I've been very careful with my models. If you watch that original DriveTribe video where I'm showing off my models, I'm very, very careful with them all. I did take this out of the box once for that race car, why race cars are so small, video on DriveTribe, and in doing so, I pinged off, see that little intake there for the turbos? I broke that off on this far side. It's glued back, and I've done an okay job of it, but just knowing that I've snapped it off really, really irks me. It's a shame, but for now, this is definitely one of my favourites. And now for the most recent addition to my collection. Let's take this one out actually. This guy here, I'm sure you will all know, is a Lotus 49, specifically Jim Clark's Lotus 49. You may have seen my video on this channel of my walk around the Lotus historic cars that are in their facility at Hethel, and this was one of the cars that was in there. Ford DFV, one of the most successful F1 cars of all time, and started off the DFV craze, which went on for, I don't want to nail down a year, but I want to say 15, 20 years. The DFV was right at the top of competition. Weirdly, I'm a massive Jim Clark fan, but I've managed to hold off getting any Jim Clark cars because I know the second I have one, the collection obsessive mindset will set in and I'll just have to start buying loads. Suddenly, having got a 49, I now need a 49B, I need a 25, I need a 43 if they even do that. I'm not sure anyone has actually made a Lotus 43 model, but if any of you guys know of anyone that has, give me a shout. Yeah, it could get pretty messy now. I got this for my birthday. My birthday's on the 22nd of January, and this was one of my gifts from my parents. So I thank them for getting it for me because it's a lovely model, really nice quality, but they don't know what they've started now. So stay tuned for more Jim Clark models incoming. And now for something a little bit different. Wait a sec. So, we're upping the scale a bit now. I am currently obsessed with the XJ220. It is in my top 2 dream cars. When anyone asks me what my dream car is, I cannot answer because it's between one of two. The XJ220 and the Porsche Carrera GT, which is a car that I do not have a model of, so I need to sort that out at some point in the near future. But I was at the NEC Classic Car Show, my favourite classic car show, potentially my favourite car show I've ever been to. I go to it virtually every year. Sadly, it's been cancelled recently, but hopefully it'll be back soon. I will always end up at some point by the model stalls, and I saw this on the top shelf. This is a 1/12 XJ220, and it's in the classic silver on black colours. The V6 twin turbo in the back, and this teardrop shape. Does it get much prettier than that? I don't think it does. But after buying this, I suddenly started really researching the XJ220, and I came across a prototype. When anyone says XJ220 prototype, they think of the V12 all-wheel drive one. Again, stay tuned for potentially something on that on the DriveTribe channel. Anyway, back to this. It turns out there were other XJ220 prototypes. Once they decided that the V12 wasn't going to happen and they went V6 twin turbo, there was then mule cars for that engine. And as I'm going to put up somewhere on screen, it was bright red with some black accents and golden wheels. And I thought, you know what, I really fancy a lockdown project because this was during the first lockdown early last year. I'm going to convert the 1/12 XJ220 into that prototype. Now, I didn't want to spoil my original model because this one's actually in really good nick, and I thought, no, let's leave that one alone. So I decided to buy another 1/12 car, and this happened. Welcome to my stab at the XJ220 prototype. Now, it was not the perfect build, I will not lie. I am not that great at this sort of modelling, this sort of customization. I've only just really got back into Airfix models and Warhammer and stuff like that from when I was a kid. So because of that, this was actually quite a big leap for me. Stripping back all the paint, right back to bare bones, stripping all the parts off the car, repainting it and putting it all back together. So there was definitely moments where I put paint stripper on bits that should not have paint stripper on it. It's a bit tatty. There's some bits of paint that have chipped off so you can see the silver underneath, but I'm pretty happy with this. Obviously it's not got the exact same wheels, it's got the XJ220 production wheels on it, but otherwise I'm pretty damn happy with this. Maybe this side is slightly better. I think it's turned out really well. I think I've got the base colour nailed. It already had some of the black accents. I had to paint the wing mirrors black just to match the car. These bits are black as well. And yeah, I think I've done an alright job. And when you put them side by side, they look pretty decent. So guys, that was the rest of my 1 to 18 collection, and then a couple of special 1 to 12 cars as well. I have got a whole load of 1 to 43s as well, which is the normal sort of smaller size but can be really nice quality models. So I may dip into them on another day if you guys like this sort of content. Maybe you guys want to see more real cars than models, but it's something I'm really into. Obviously I've also started my live streams as well. I did one, well, I say obviously, I have done one, and it was last week, and basically it's just me doing an airfix and treating it as an AMA and ask me anything. So I'm sitting there building a model and you guys can ask me anything about DriveTribe or Clarkson Hamden May or car journalism or anything you guys want really. So stay tuned for more of them, and I would like to know from you guys, what was your favourite model that I had? Don't be biased towards this car because it's on screen. Was it the Speed 8, the Jag F1 car, the Mustang, the Agora Models Mustang, the Lotus 49? Go back through and tell me which one in the comments was your favourite. I've been Mike, and I'll see you again next time.